Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, muli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so very happy that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Samantha Hawkins. She is here to celebrate My Mommy Marches. Before we invite Samantha into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. We also have a great Pinterest page. It's called Reading With Your Kids. And of course, the Reading With Your Kids YouTube channel, where you can find our new Drawing With Your Kids drawing lessons featuring some of the best illustrators in children's literature. And of course, we'd love for you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can, if you're an author, you absolutely want to click on our authors Click Here button at the top of the page to learn how we can help celebrate your book. Also learn how you can be a guest here on the podcast. It's fun, it's easy, and it doesn't cost a thing. Check it out today, readingwithyourkids.com. And oh, please do use that contact button at the top of the page. Send us a message. Let us know what we're doing well. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the podcast. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Marietta in Georgia. Our guest is here today to celebrate, I think, a really important book. It's called My Mommy Marches. Please welcome to the show, Samantha Hawkins. Hey, Samantha, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. I tell you what, I started off this day feeling pretty splendid as it is, but definitely glad to be on this show. It is an honor and a joy, and to be a longtime fan, and now to be here, I'm like, that's just incredible.
Okay, well, you need to stop that because my head is getting too big. I won't be able to leave the studio here. I think My Mommy Marches, I haven't had a chance to read the book, but reading the description and the information that you sent to me, it's a book that I can 100% get behind because it's really talking about something that I've been talking to kids about for 30 years, which is when you see somebody being hurt, stand up and say something.
Oh, absolutely. It's such a simple message and concept. And I'm thankful for those like you in this industry who's been really pushing that message. And believe it, all these years later, we're still trying to push that message and get it out there. The simple concept of activism isn't this grand act. It's really small ways in which we improve our world and make it better for everyone. And you can do it at any age.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way that I was doing it was around the context of bullying and helping schools create a safe environment where everybody felt welcomed, respected, and included. And so I would talk to kids about the power that they had to stand up and invite somebody who looked lonely into your friend group, to stand up and say something when somebody was being hurt. And if you didn't have the ability to stand up and to speak directly to the person that was hurting somebody, to say something to a teacher or to a principal. And I think really that's that the kids who learn how to do that then learn how to stand up and say, hey, Mr. Government, y'all aren't treating these people over here the way that we should be treated.
Exactly. You're so right. And so it really does start with that. In the school, in the classroom, as simple as teacher, this is happening and this shouldn't be happening. Or you shouldn't be talking to our classmate this way. Or why are you treating them differently? Well, because they look different, because they wear different clothes, because their favorite color might not be your favorite color, or you don't understand why they like that color because they're a boy or they're a girl. It's those simple things that adds up. And you're right. When we teach our children, our future, our literal future, our children, our grandchildren, to already start speaking up for themselves and standing up for others and speaking up for others, they're bound to grow into responsible adults who carries that on. So whatever jobs they land at, whatever careers they build for themselves, it's going to still be based off of, I want to speak up and stand for others because I started doing this as a child and I'm doing it now. So we really, as the adults of the world, we have to support that for our kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Truly.
So tell us a little bit about My Mommy Marches. Who are we going to meet in this story?
So in this story, it's basically from the perspective of a precocious, just curious little girl who is watching her mother march for justice. And what I love about this book, in fact, that all through it, first of all, I have to give all credit to my publisher, Lantana Publishing, who is UK-based, and so this book is coming out in the UK and in the US, and my illustrator, Corey Reed. Really what they did, along with the text that I wrote, is we created this picture where this kid is watching their mother march, and it's not tied to any single issue. I didn't want that. I didn't want one message. What I wanted to do was set the groundwork that any parent of any child could read this book to their kid and use it to teach them about the values that are important to them and their family. And on a basic level of just whatever cause it is, we have to keep people, life, love, liberty, pursuit of happiness at the forefront. Mm-hmm. And so everyone has a right to that. And everyone is entitled. So rather than it just being one message, this young girl is watching her mother march up and down the streets, in the snow, in the sunshine, in good weather and bad weather, marching by herself, she says, sometimes with tears in her eyes, sometimes happy and jubilant with others, but marching for what she believes in. Mm-hmm. So children will learn whatever values that are instilled in them to march for what they believe in. And I thought the concept of marching was something that could really resonate with children. Big words like protesting, and they don't understand that. They don't get that, right? But any child knows what it is to march. Mm-hmm. Up, left, right, up, down. Putting feet to your words. If you believe in something, you're going to say something, and you're going to do something about what you believe in.
Yeah. And I think I'm happy that you're using the march, because mm-hmm. as powerful as a protest can be, a march seems more powerful in some ways because it is intentional, whereas a protest a lot of times is emotional, and it's an emotional response to something. And very oftentimes it's an emotional response to something that is so egregious that we have to speak up, we have to do something. But a lot of times the protest, it's there, it explodes, and then it's over. Whereas a march, people come together, and it's this, and it's thought out, and this is our message, and this is our messaging, and we're going to go out there, and we're going to show the powers that be that we're here. We're not being emotional. We're not exploding. We're here, and we're in it for the long haul.
You are so right, and like you spelled out the difference, it really is. When we march, it's in unison. It's not just in numbers and just everyone out there. It's in unison, and there's strength when we're all united. It's the combination of passion and purpose. You can go out there and you can be passionate and you can have a sign and you can protest or whatever, but it can, kind of become emotional and spiral out of control. Whereas with marching, it's passion combined with purpose. We're there with a mission in mind. We're there united for this goal. We want to send a message, and it's just so much more meaningful to me than any other kind of protest there is. It's marching for, a stance and saying, I'm going to be seen and we're going to be heard, but we're going to do it in a way that truly matters and is truly, brings the message home rather than just seems like we're disorganized and we're all over the place. Marching to me is just the best image, I thought, for that book.
Yeah. And I love to, I think, usually I ask an author what kind of conversations a family can have. We've already talked a lot about that right now. But I think one of the conversations that I would have had with my kids if I had had this book when my kids were younger, they're in their 20s right now. I think I might still read this with them. But it's that idea, celebrating the fact that we live in a nation where we can do this. We live in a nation where we can march. And that is not something that is universal. There are millions, possibly billions of people who live in societies where taking to the streets in protest or in marches can literally put their lives at risk.
You are absolutely correct. And even thinking about our book market for children's, right? In the U.S., we have the privilege to say that our book market for children is saturated with books, especially in these recent years, about social justice and diversity and inclusiveness. But part of my inspiration for writing this book and really knowing that I wanted it to be published in the UK as well, is because I came across an article some years ago. And in a nutshell, this article said there was a greater likelihood for a black or brown child or child of any minority ethnic group to walk into a bookstore, to open up a book in the children's section, and there was a greater chance that the face staring back at them would be an animal than the face of someone that looks like them. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay. Well, I tell you what, I don't fancy myself as the greatest writer in the world. I've got a lot of learning to do, but I said, I can at least take my gift and my talent and I can put it to good use. And if I can write a book that can go out in the UK to affect a children's book market where they don't see as many books as we see in the US, if I can affect that a child that looks like me, or looks like one of my nieces or nephew, or biracial, they can go into a bookstore, in the UK and pick up a book and see a face looking back at them that looks like them. That's what I'm here for. Yeah. That's what I want to use my gifts for.
That's wonderful. One of the things, and I've said this before, if I were to tell you that almost 6 years ago when I launched the Reading with Your Kids podcast, I had this great master plan where we would talk to authors of all different races about all these, I'd be completely full of it. I launched the Reading with Your Kids podcast because I know that the relationship I have with my now adult kids, which is a pretty good relationship, started when they were sitting on my laps and I was reading to them. And the fact that we can have conversations, even though we look at the world very differently, the fact that we can sit down, I can sit down with my son and with my daughter, and we can have a civil conversation where we disagree, but we still love each other, and we can still talk about issues respectfully, and we can hear each other and actually hear. And again, it started when we're reading together, and that is what I set out to create with the Reading with Your Kids podcast, is to encourage families because of that reason. But there are so many more benefits of books, and what you said, a book being a mirror, allowing a kid to see themselves positively reflected in the pages of a book. And I think even more importantly, to allow a kid to see somebody who looks different from them portrayed
absolutely.
Positively, to allow a book to be a window into another's life is so very valuable.
You are so right. Books really are a child's first introduction to the world, even before television and movies. And yes, unfortunately, it seems like kids are watching movies and television shows on iPads a lot younger than we have. But books are always going to be their first introduction. the little books, the hardcover books we read, the hardback books, how many words, how many images they see, and they go, oh, that's a cow. Oh, so that's a duck. And that's how they piece together. So it only makes sense, like you said, it is a mirror, and we want it to reflect them, and we want them to see people that look like them. But if they're going to be introduced to a world where it's full of a lot of people that won't look like them, won't dress like them, we should have books that introduce them, to that as well, to our cultural differences. So they don't go into the world, they don't go into their classroom, and not have that respect for other people's beliefs and cultures and values. So for me, books, it's like a duty almost as a writer and as a children's book writer to cover that knowing the impression that we make on children daily. We need to write books that send that message and that tells them that, yes, again, if you see a child that doesn't look like you, it doesn't make them less than you. It doesn't make them wrong or anything. They're just different, and there's nothing wrong in different. There's nothing wrong in you being different, and there's nothing wrong with the child to the left or to the right of you being different as well.
Amen. 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 Samantha, was there one thing in particular that inspired you to write this book?
So, after I read that article, I just said, well, I'm going to write a children's book, but I just kind of didn't know where to go at. And I thought, okay, what kind of book would you want to read when you were that age? What book would have moved you? Interesting enough, I didn't read a lot of picture books as a child. I was one of those that I was always like the next grade ahead. I read more picture books now as an adult, actually. I go back and I feel like I'm catching up on picture books. But my nieces and my nephew, they read a lot of picture books. So I started with that. Well, what kind of books would I want them to read? Books that would have been great for me to read as a child, and books that they could read now that would teach them. I tell you what, in my job, communication is very important. I work in 911, so I'm used to using my voice for something. So the idea of using your voice for good is not an uncommon thing for me. And we can be really loud in a 911 center, but sometimes you can be too loud, right? And I've always, ever since I was a kid, I've always heard at some point someone's like, Sam, can you tone it down a little bit, Well, the concept that I had in my head, there's times when you simply have to use your outside voice inside. And as a child, and even my nieces, my nephews, we all the time, they're told, hey, use your inside voice, use your inside voice. But what are the moments, what are the times, what are the situations when I would absolutely want them to use their outside voice indoors? When they're in harm's way, when someone's mistreating them, judging them, hurting them, and especially someone else as well. I would want them in a heartbeat to use their outside voice inside. So all of that was kind of spinning around in my head. After reading that study about the UK and the lack of books, I think it was like less than 4% back then when that article was written, and thinking about my nieces and nephew, thinking about the kind of books that I would have wanted to read, and thinking about that thought of using your outside voice indoors, all of that put together to me that I was going to write a book where a child would kind of, I thought, like using your mom, your parents, who do you respect more as a child? So for a child to see her mother doing this, marching for good, and to say, oh, I can do that too. I don't have to wait till I'm older. I can do that now. I can speak up. I can say something. I can put a voice behind my beliefs and put feet to my words. And I can actually make a stand and make a change right where I'm at. Yeah. So all of that really is what inspired me to write this book.
Well, that was really, really powerful. Throughout this interview, I've had this image flashing in my mind, and I shared with you that I've been doing educational magic shows, and they've been, centered around the topic of building respectful schools and saying something if somebody sees somebody being bullied or hurt or mistreated. And I remember when I started that particular show, I went out, and the very first thing that I would say is, you have the right to go to a school where you feel safe. And I remember the very first time I said that, I was shocked because the eyes of the kids in the audience lit up. And and it was if they were hearing something for the very first time. And I made a note of that, and I said, well, no, I have to keep this in the show. And every time I would say that, there were kids in the audience whose eyes would light up, and it was like they were hearing something for the very first time. And I think encouraging kids to do what we're talking about here, to stand up and to say something, to come together as a group, to march, to work, to make this a better world. It's really powerful and really important. And I'm so happy that you've created this book and given families an opportunity not only to see themselves in books, to see others, but also just to understand that we're part of this big, beautiful human family that is ever evolving, and that we're always going to be working to try to make the world a better place for everyone.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And truly, for me, it was just a work of love. It was. I don't really see it as this project that I just put out there because I'm so great at all. I mean, again, it's an excellent publisher, Lintana. They have been behind books like this for years now. This is their mission. It's what drew me to them. They were my first choice in a publisher, so I was pretty ecstatic that they accepted, to join on. But for me, this project chose me. Mm-hmm. This mission chose me to do, and I'm just honored to be able to be a tool almost to help get that message across to children of you can start right where you are, right in your schools, at church, in the playground, in your homes, wherever. Start where you are. You don't have to be an adult. You don't have to wait till then to use your voice, to use your feet, to use your hands for good. You can do it now. We say that children are the future, and they are. But there's so much change and there's so much good they bring into the world right now in the present. So yes, they are the future, and they are our future doctors and writers and illustrators and podcasters, and politicians and what have you. But right now, at 5 and 6 and 7 and 9 and 12 and 13, they can be heroes right here and now. I know they can. I've seen it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, I want to thank you for writing this book. I also want to thank you for being part of our emergency response system. Being a 911, answering those calls is not easy. There's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure. Mm. I'm wondering, just real quick, not to put you on the spot, but is there one funny call that you had to answer, or one very, very memorable call? Maybe a call where a 5 or 6 year old was the one on the line and you were able to help them save a life.
I have not personally, but so this is more funny than actually, but we do get a lot of calls from kids, and probably one of the best calls we had from a child that, again, I didn't answer, but one of our dispatchers took, was a kid saying, "Hey, I was at school and we had someone from 911 came and told us that we could call 911 for an emergency. I just wanted to make sure it works." They're like, "It does work. Save it for an emergency, but we'll be here." And that's just one of the funniest that just kind of popped in my head. But He was like, all right, so it does work. It definitely works. Are you having an emergency? No? Okay. Well, call us if you do.
Yeah. But don't call us again to check. We're going to be here. Don't worry.
Yes, that's already proved. And tell all your friends, by the way. It works. Don't have to call it if they're not having an emergency.
Hey, Samantha, I know that if I'm in Marietta and I wanted to get in touch with a firefighter, I could call you on 911. But if somebody is here in any place in the U.S. or the U.K. or anywhere in the world and they wanted to find out more about you and find out more about My Mommy Marches, where should they go?
Well, they could follow me on Instagram at Forever Telling Tales. Forever Telling Tales. That is my Instagram handle. I'm also on LinkedIn. And please follow Lantana Publishing. Lantana Publishing on Instagram. Check out their website for some great books. And do look forward to My Mommy Marches coming out in March of this year. So, exciting times.
How appropriate. A book about marching comes out in March.
You know what? I would like to take credit and say I planned that, but I literally just realized it as you said it. So,
well,
but going forward, I'm going to pretend like I knew that all along.
Well, I would like to take credit for the fact that I intentionally started the Reading with Your Kids podcast in the Reedville neighborhood of Boston. But I was podcasting for 2 years before I actually made the connection, and it was somebody else who did it for me. So I hear you.
Amazing.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of My Mommy Marches, Samantha Hawkins. Samantha, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, and maybe I can come back again.
Absolutely.
But I love it. Thank you so much. You are incredible, Jed.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Dr. Sarah Catherine Mundy. She'll be here to celebrate. Please stay here. I want you near. She is a consulting clinical psychologist working with children and families. She has some amazing insights. You don't want to miss it. It's the next episode of the podcast. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Samantha Hawkins. Please be sure to check out My Mommy Marchers. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Jordan Saley, Stephanie Davila, Will Cheever, Cassandra Masonet. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.